Alright, let's deep dive into what gallery stills are and what are memories. So I'm going to start off with gallery stills. Right here in your top left corner, you're going to see a tab for gallery. Go ahead and click on that. It might look like this on your end, so you got to click on this little guy to pop it open and see what it says right here. So this is what's going to be default. You're going to have stills 1, power grade 1. Now, let me just get right into the difference between stills and power grade. Stills is tethered to your project. So anything that you're doing within that project lives in stills. So if you move on to another project, your stills won't show up that you saved in the prior project in your new project. On the other hand, power grade are universal. So when you drop anything in your power grade in Resolve, that will show up in your entire database. So that's tethered to your database. So stills tethered to your project. Power grade tethered to your database. So anywhere you go within your project is going to show up. So in here, I saved a node tree structure that's mine. And I created this node tree structure, which you guys should be receiving as well when you get the course materials. And that's basically a base grade whenever I'm working on something. So it saves me a lot of time instead of like creating nodes per shot and then naming them and all that stuff. By hitting just one button and applying this thumbnail, it's gonna do all that for me. So let me just give you an example. If I double click on that and apply it, look what's happening over here. It brought in everything, and I leave everything empty or on default for most of the nodes because that's when I have to get in and work on it per shot basis. But having this as my go-to point, then having just node 1 and then recreating it every time per shot saves me tons of time. This works for me, so it's included. You can give it a shot and see how it works, but I will highly recommend trying out your own and see what you like best and then saving it in your power grade. Then that is going to be accessible throughout the database. So anytime you start a new project, you can go into your power grades under gallery and apply that as your base. Now moving back to stills. What's the purpose of stills and when to use it? So let me just give you a quick example of when you can use stills and how it's effective when it comes to shot matching and why it's one of the most important tools that you got. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do just a base grade, nothing too fancy. Just give it something, give it a little pop, some saturation. I'm gonna pull out some of this blue that's happening, but a bit too much. So I'm gonna just dial that back a little bit. You know, this is okay, this is good. So what I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna go ahead and grab that still. There's multiple ways you can do it. I'm gonna show you on screen instead of using my panel so you can see what I'm doing. So on your main canvas, you just right click and you say grab still. When you do that, it shows up in your stills gallery right here. Let's just say if we wanna create a new version and we wanna switch things up, we wanna do something. So the idea is that anytime you have your first look dialed in and before you go in and make changes to it, you want to grab a still. So you can always go back to that point, okay? Or reference back to that point. So let's just say the director goes, hey, can you add some warmth? It's just like, I want some warmth in the highlights. I'm going to be like, okay, no problem. So let's add some warmth and let's warm it up. So how do you feel about that? You know, the director is like, can we see before and after? Can we see the other version that you had? Okay, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and hit play still and bring in my other image. So let me show you how else you can do it. I can right click on it and say play still. So now we have our other image giving us side-by-side comparison, and then you can see what's active right here. I can also do, so right now I have a horizontal side-by-side. I can do vertical side-by-side. I can do a mix. And then there's all these different options that you can go through. I usually leave it on horizontal most of the time, but sometimes you will be using vertical, but these are the two most common ways. So once you have that, you can go, hey, what do you think now? And then if you want to get rid of it, you just hit Command W and you can see the keystrokes right here. Command W, it goes away. Command W, it shows up again. And then we can just look at it and be like, okay, the director goes, I do like the pop, you know, how about if we can split the difference? And then I can give them something in between. So that's the idea of your stills. Another huge thing about stills is that when you're doing shot matching, so I go to this shot, and let's just say I just do some basic rough correction and I go, let's add some saturation, and this is good. Now, if we want to shot match it and make sure that it goes well with this shot, the shot before, I can bring in my still next to my image. And by the way, if you click right here, you can move it around and see how much or how little you want to see. So if I park it right here, and I focus on the asphalt, the road, I can totally see that I have way too much blue than what I got going on right here. So there's a couple of different ways we can approach it and fix it. So let me just use my temp control right here just to dial it in a little bit and add some magenta in there. So I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, we started with this and now we're here. And I'm just saying, you know what, this is looking much better than what I had before. You know, and obviously we can work more to dial it in because there's more magenta here than there is here. But that's just to give you an example that that's what it's going to be used for. And then you can just get rid of it. Now, if you want to look at the other side, if you want to flip that from right to left, you can do that by holding Option W. So if you hit Option W, you can flip that. And it'll go to the other side. So a couple of things that I want to show you once you have gallery stills, how to really maximize it. I'm going to show you that right here. So this guy, click on this dude right here, and then you have all these little tabs right here. I'm going to go to the last one. The last one is for my reference sizing. So reference, this is the reference image. What we're pulling right here is the reference image. And this is the sizing for my reference image. So a lot of the times what you want to do is you want to make this to 0.5, half the size, so we can see the whole picture. And then I'm going to take my pan and I'm going to move it over. And if I move it over, now I see my entire shot. Okay. And that's very useful because now we see the whole picture, all the colors in it. So that makes it really easy for me to go, you know what? Yeah, I definitely need way more magenta because even if I'm looking at the rocks right here, they're way more magenta than what I'm getting right here. And then do I need more warmth? Maybe a little less, like whatever it is, you can dial it in right here. And then you can just bypass the color and see where you started to where you are and if you're getting close. The reference sizing is very useful. Now, if you're somewhere else and you're like, what's going on? I want this bigger. Like, this is not looking right. Like, what is this? Like, this is not looking right. I want it to be full screen. Go back to how it was. It's pretty simple. Just go back into your sizing tab. And then under here, you can just hit this guy right here, which is going to reset everything. And it's just going to go back to normal. So that was a handy little trick that I wanted to show you, which is very useful because these tools are there, but you really have to mold them into however you want to use them. Another useful thing that I can show you is this guy right here. So this is different than this. So when you hit Option W, you basically choose which side you want to reveal of the reference and vice versa. But if you hit this guy right here, you can actually flip this image, the reference image, and see the other side. So now I can focus on what's happening here is what's happening here. So I can like really dial it in. So this is better here. And if I go here, then that's better here because I want to see the bikes are right there. So I want to see this grass right there instead of what it's showing me, which is way past this frame. And that's not really helpful. So that's when I'm going to be flipping that and using that to my advantage. So all these tools are there. and they're very, very helpful. You got to play around with it. I would highly recommend getting in there and start experimenting with it to make sense of it and how to best use it for your project. Another thing that I'm going to show you is that if you have multiple timelines in one project, I will highly recommend right-clicking right here and add still album, and then each album will be your timeline. So this one we can call the Great Bike because that is my timeline. Actually, you know what? It's called the Great Ride. I don't know why I called it the Great Bike. So let's change the name of this project really quick. We're gonna take a quick little detour. I'm gonna pop that open. And then everything from the Great Ride lives inside here. And then when I go to, let's just say, the Cosman finish, when we're gonna be going through this project, then I can call this one the Cosman. So I would highly recommend keeping everything very clean and tidy in here. Sometimes if you're working on one timeline, but you have different versions, then you're gonna version them. So then you're gonna have the Great Ride V1, V2, stuff like that. So if you're just creating completely different grades each time, then you're gonna do that. Sometimes I've done that on commercials where I created a cool look and I created a warm look, and that was for the entire 30-second spot. So then I had Mazda cool, Mazda warm, and then we went through and we picked which one we liked and we worked off of that. So those were some of the things that you need to know with stills. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be using these tools throughout this module, so you're gonna get to see it in action. Now I'm gonna go ahead and move on to memories. Memories are kind of tucked away, so this little guy arrow down on that little ledge, you got to click on this guy and it'll pop this open. These are your memories, and let me show you what it means and how to best use them. The difference between stills and memories is this. Memories are great for when you're working on something like that, where we have many different locations and some of the shots that are repeated. So this shot is somewhat repeated right here. So we have this shot and we have this shot. Now let's just say if we have graded this shot right here, then we move on and we graded this shot right here, then we move on, we apply that grade, but then we fix it because obviously it's not really coming through all the way. It's a bit too warm. So now we're gonna pull that out, make it something like that, and that's another version. Then we're gonna go here, and then that was shot with a different camera, so that's not coming through. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna use our highlights, bring that down, add some warmth, and then just add some magenta, whatever, you know, like for now, I mean, I'm just like giving you an example. We're not grading this stuff. So these are 4 grades. Then we go right here. Imagine if you go down the road right here and then you get another shot that's a drone shot, and you had created a look for it back in shot 1, and now you're on, imagine, shot 130, and you're like, oh man, where was that look? But let's just say that you're bouncing back and forth between locations and shots, total of like 8 different shots. So like you have 4 locations, 4 cameras. So if you fill up your memory bank, if you have 8 looks saved here that are different with different cameras, you can keep reapplying them as your base grade and then work off of that, if that makes any sense. So let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about. So I can come right here and I can go, you know what? I want to save that as my memory bank A. So I can click save and it saves right here, and you can see the shortcut keys right here. Now I go to my second shot and I go, that's a pretty good grade 2. Let me save that on 2. So I'm gonna save it on memory bank 2. I move on, I go to this and I go, let's save that to 3. I move on and I go, let's save that to 4. So now I got these 4 shots. The beautiful thing about it is that now when I go to my 5th shot, instead of, let's just say if this 5th shot was right here, and then I had to scroll all the way back and then middle click on this clip, I don't need to hunt down the shot anymore because it lives in my memory bank. So I can easily just go load memory 1 with the hotkey and boom, it comes in. So that is the beauty of having these right here. And now it's obviously looking a little different than this guy. It's a bit warmer, so I can go ahead and make adjustments accordingly to balance it out. That's the beauty behind Memory Bank. You can just have 8 looks readily available when you're moving on, and sometimes maybe you can use this feature as an experiment and you can drop in a cool look and stumble upon something new, or you can use it in a way that I said or I use, which is if I'm working on a shoot where there's 4 different locations and 2 different cameras with each location, that's a total of 8, then I will save each of those as a memory, so when I move along I can just drop the appropriate one on the shot that I'm working on and then just build my grade from there. So that was a quick overview of gallery stills and memories, and I'm going to be using these as we dive into the tutorial section of this module.